In today's show, President Trump fires up the UN, YouTube lifts big bans, and the Secret Service busts a massive telecom threat right outside the General Assembly. Plus, a late-night post rattles Kristi Noem's family. A Colorado search ends in tragedy. And Iris Apfel's dazzling closet is up for grabs. And here's today's trivia question. Which state leads the U.S. in pumpkin production? It's Wednesday, September 24th. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Hello and welcome to the Flyover Podcast. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown, and let me be the first to welcome you if you're just finding this podcast. There's a mix of politics, sports, finance, and so much more. So let's take off with the biggest headlines of the day. President Trump delivered a fiery hour-long speech at the UN General Assembly, blasting open borders and even questioning the purpose of the UN itself. He warned that nations embracing mass migration were, quote, going to hell, and accused the organization of relying on, quote, empty words instead of action. Trump also met with Ukrainian President Zelensky, praising his fight against Russia and saying Kiev could ultimately reclaim all its lost territory, while backing NATO nations' right to shoot down Russian aircraft in their own airspace. He called French President Emmanuel Macron a friend in the conflict and said Zelensky is putting up one hell of a fight. Watch the entire speech in the show notes below. Meanwhile, YouTube is rolling back some of its most controversial bans. The platform will reinstate accounts removed for COVID-19 and election-related content after pressure from House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan and other Republicans investigating government influence over content moderation. In a letter to Congress, YouTube's parent company Alphabet admitted the Biden administration pushed for removals that didn't actually violate company policy, something Alphabet now calls, quote, unacceptable and wrong. Big names like Dan Bongino, Sebastian Gorka, and Steve Bannon will soon be allowed back on the site. And finally, a major security scare near the UN. The Secret Service uncovered a massive illegal telecom network capable of jamming 911 calls, knocking out cell towers, or blasting 30 million text messages a minute. Agents seized more than 300 SIM servers and over 100,000 SIM cards, and investigators are looking at everything from foreign governments to organized crime as possible suspects. Similar networks have popped up in California and the Midwest, and while there's no direct plot tied to the UN meetings, officials are treating it as a serious threat. Here's what's happening in politics. Ryan Ruth was convicted of attempting to assassinate then GOP nominee Donald Trump with an assault rifle at one of Trump's golf courses. Court reporters say that right after the verdict, Ruth tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen as jurors were leaving the room, and marshals quickly intervened. In Washington, President Trump signed an executive order officially designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. The order claims the group uses illegal tactics to organize violence nationwide. Legal experts note this is largely symbolic because U.S. law doesn't create a clear path for prosecuting domestic groups the same way it does foreign terrorist organizations. Broadcast news is feeling the ripple effects of the Jimmy Kimmel controversy. Nexstar Media says it will stop airing Jimmy Kimmel Live after the host's return last night, joining Sinclair Broadcast Group, which made the same decision on Monday. Together, those two station groups own 66 of ABC's roughly 240 affiliates, meaning a significant chunk of the country may not see Kimmel's show until the dispute is resolved. And finally, President Trump canceling a planned meeting with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to talk about avoiding a government shutdown. He said the talks, quote, wouldn't be productive, even as the funding deadline draws closer at the end of the month. Here are some podcast extra stories just for you. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says a late-night social media post from California Governor Gavin Newsom's press office reading, "Kristi Noem is going to have a bad day today. You're welcome, America," alarmed her family and staff. She told Fox News the message felt menacing, especially given previous threats against her. In Colorado, a heartbreaking discovery. Two elk hunters, Andrew Porter of North Carolina and Ian Stasko of Utah, were found dead after a week-long search in the San Juan wilderness. Investigators say a lightning strike killed the 25-year-olds instantly, and a GoFundMe that raised nearly $79,000 for the search will now help their families. And in New York, fashion fans are lining up for a once-in-a-lifetime sale of Iris Apfel's personal wardrobe. The late-style icon's bold collection from Yves Saint Laurent jackets to flea market statement pieces is available at the Real Reals Soho flagship and online, offering a rare chance to own a slice of her legendary More is More look. Still to come, Spirit slashes flights and staff ahead of Christmas. Golf star Scotty Scheffler gives his Ryder Cup earnings to charity, and France's president takes an unplanned New York stroll after Trump's traffic jam. And a big thanks to our friends at Cozy Earth. They're giving our listeners an insane discount, so just you wait. And let me tell you about Cozy Earth's viscose from bamboo sheets. They're temperature regulating, comfy, and somehow manage to wick away the heat and humidity when I sleep at night. And their bubble cuddle blanket is plush, mid-weight, and has this textured bubble design that is so ridiculously soft. If you're curious, Cozy Earth makes it easy to try. There's a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, so you can test it without risk. Head to CozyEarth.com and use the code FLYOVER for 40% off. 40% off. See, I told you that is an amazing deal. Your bed should be more than just a place to sleep. It should be the best part of your day, and Cozy Earth can help make that happen. The link to take advantage of this offer is in the show notes. And don't forget to use that code FLYOVER for 40% off. In finance, Tom Brady is stepping into the wellness tech world. He's partnering with robotic massage startup Escape as a new chief innovation officer, giving the company exclusive rights to his recovery and longevity methods. The move follows years of Brady promoting his TB12 brand and keeps him firmly in the sports health space. Meanwhile, Spirit Airlines announced nearly 1,800 flight attendant layoffs just weeks before the busy Christmas travel season. The carrier, in its second bankruptcy since August, plans to cut a quarter of its November flight as it struggles with rising costs and intense low-fare competition. And in a potential boost for U.S. manufacturing, Washington and Beijing are reportedly finalizing a massive Boeing deal that could see China purchase up to 500 aircraft, part of a wider trade agreement aimed at easing tensions. Industry analysts say a contract that size would be Boeing's biggest single-nation order in years and a key win after recent production setbacks. Here's your stock market update from yesterday. The Nasdaq fell 0.95%, the S&P 500 dropped 0.55%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.19%. In commodities, Bitcoin edged down 0.76%, while gold rose again 1.46% to $3,795 per ounce. Big mover of the day was Crane NXT. The company jumped to almost 15% after the payment technology company forecast strong growth for its U.S. currency business. In sports, baseball's biggest change in decades is coming. Major League Baseball has approved robot umpires for the 2026 season. The league will use an automated balls and strikes challenge system where human umpires make the initial call and players can challenge up to 2 pitches per game, with technology delivering the final verdict. A system that's been tested in the minors and the Atlantic League for several years. We have a poll question about this later on, by the way. Next, Oklahoma State made a big move Monday, firing longtime head coach Mike Gundy after a rough 1-2 start. Gundy had led the Cowboys since 2005, making him one of the longest tenured coaches in the country. Over in golf, world number one Scotty Scheffler says he and several U.S. Ryder Cup teammates will donate their entire $200,000 stipends to charity, a gesture announced after British players criticized the Americans for getting paid. And the SEC shook up college football with a new schedule format, locking every team into 3 permanent opponents for the next 4 years. Rivalries like Alabama-Auburn and Georgia-Florida are safe, but some fresh matchups are on the way. If you're an SEC fan, you can find more info in today's show notes about this new scheduling format. In science and technology, NASA scientists are looking at a nuclear backup plan for asteroid 2024 YR4, a 300-foot rock with a small, about 4% chance of hitting the moon in 2032. They stress it's no threat to Earth, but the mission would test how well we could deflect future space hazards. And a massive survey of 47,000 dogs found that smaller breeds tend to be more fearful and snappy, while females are generally easier to train. Aren't we all? Researchers from the University of Helsinki also noted that spayed or neutered dogs were slightly less obedient, challenging some long-held assumptions about pet behavior. Let's wrap things up with a few shorter headlines that we thought you should know about today. French President Emmanuel Macron got an unexpected New York workout. He says he had to walk about 30 minutes through Manhattan after President Trump's motorcade gridlocked traffic during the UN General Assembly. Macron reportedly called Trump directly to vent, then pivoted the conversation to the ongoing war in Gaza. Mysterious drones shut down Copenhagen airport Monday night in what Danish officials called a serious attack, grounding flights and forcing a full evacuation. Norway's Oslo airport was also disrupted by a separate drone scare before reopening Tuesday morning. Back in the U.S., Rep. Elise Stefanik is putting her D.C. townhouse on the market for $2.19 million as she eyes a 2026 run for New York governor. She says she wants to spend more time upstate with her family on their Saratoga country farm. See photos of the townhouse in today's show notes. Maybe you should buy it. And if you've ever wondered what couples fight about the most, a new Forbes survey of thousands of Americans found that the top triggers are money, intimacy, household chores, extended family, and last but not least, and it is number one, tone of voice. Sometimes it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. Here are the results of yesterday's poll question. Do you currently have an Amazon Prime membership? 69% of you said yes, 24% said no, and 7% said, what's Amazon Prime? You know what? I envy the 7% of you who have no idea what it even is. A round of applause for you. Thank you to everyone who voted. Here is today's poll question. We were talking about baseball and the automated system for umpires. So, should baseball replace human umpires with an automated system for calling strikes? Either yes, no, or don't care. Personally, I lean yes. Even the best umps can miss calls or get swayed by the emotion of the game, and baseball, especially behind the plate, feels like the perfect sport to get a little extra help from technology. Other sports might be trickier, but for balls and strikes, why not give it a shot? You can vote in the show notes below. I'm curious to see what your answers will be. In the spirit of pumpkins, which is why I'm wearing an orange shirt today, here's the trivia question. Which state leads the U.S. in pumpkin production? The answer, Illinois leads with 634 million pounds. Indiana is next at 161 million pounds, followed by California at 122 million pounds. Michigan and Pennsylvania each produce around 90 million pounds of pumpkins. Who out there has a great pumpkin pie recipe? Maybe you have a family favorite. I would love to try and make a pumpkin pie this year. I've never done one. So if you wouldn't mind, leave your recipe in the comments section and I will do my absolute best to make you proud. Thank you to everyone who tuned into today's episode. Just a quick housekeeping note. Amy Hess and I are playing a bit of switcheroo. She's taking my shift tomorrow, and I'll be taking hers on Saturday. Nothing changes. Same great podcast with the biggest headlines of the day. So come back tomorrow, catch the news with Amy, and I will see you again on Friday. Thanks for flying with us.